constituted our operations committee to be tech and AI solutions. It is more of a priority. I think we're actually leading the charge from a firm-wide standpoint. And so, look, it's some simple things. We've been very hesitant to dive in just because we don't want to lose some of our IP. But we're moving very quickly to lean into some tools, and it's simple. What we're doing is we're having a lot of smaller pilot programs to understand what is the best solution, the best tool that we can use to help our junior bankers, help our professional support staff, just to be more efficient. Just simple things like leaning into Microsoft Copilot and finding ways to how can that improve our data tracking, meeting follow-ups, things like that. Like there's some really easy wins that we've seen. We then need to make sure everybody's trained on how to optimize those solutions.
Great. All right. Well, Carlos, kicking to you next.
Sure. I mean, so technology tools, I mean, we're using all the different resources like PitchBook, Capital IQ, for sourcing, kind of direct sourcing, Grata, SourceScrub, Rocket Reach. A new platform we're trying right now is called Silk. And then, as a firm, we have been thinking and focusing on the impacts and the opportunities around generative AI since last year, both in terms of how that could be impactful to our portfolio, where there may be opportunities within our portfolio companies to invest and explore, and then, even currently in our processes internally. I will say, I actually just sat down with a couple of associates yesterday and had a little bit of a lesson on how I can better apply ChatGPT to my everyday functions. And I'm going to have to say I was mind blown because I hadn't been using it. And great at planning vacations, great at, being kind of my new search engine, and not applied that to, incorporating past presentations that I have utilized, watching it learn that, tell them I want to update on these areas and have it kind of kick out a framework for the presentation that I'm working on. I think it's pretty exciting to see, this kind of technology starting to integrate in our business. I do think over time in business development roles, there may be native AI that could be applied to what we do just for better communication follow-ups. I would love if there was, there's probably an AI tool out there that would help me just get through my inbox a lot quicker every day, prioritize who I need to respond to immediately, and then maybe respond for me on some of this stuff. But I think it's pretty exciting, efficiency that's going to be driven into our business. I think the biggest challenge is how do you train people on this, right? So it took me sitting down with a couple of our associates who have a number of different tools. One of the associates is kind of doing pilot programs on a number of different products, including ChatGPT Deep Research, which I'd never seen before, and it's incredible. And so, where my head has been out most recently is how do I get access and how do I train my team?
I think it's first the hype around AI really, I think, has in some ways disillusioned a lot of both technology and business leaders. And a lot of the same truisms that we've always thought about in rolling out an operational product or a project or a technology solution apply as much today, if not more, for AI as they have for traditional means. One, we start with this has to have a clear KPI, a clear orientation, a clear impact to a business process that really matters. One of my partners talks a lot about that it has to have a between 15 and 25% impact to the EBITDA of that particular line of business. Because without that agreement and alignment and materiality, it's easy for it to be viewed as a pet project. I think what we saw in a lot of 2023 on the back of the hype of ChatGPT was a lot of these proof of concepts that really had limited impact to ensure that you have success. So when you're missing that, that is one key flag and something I'd be worried about on the onset. And second area is really a lot of businesses have a core talent mismatch around AI, with the expectation that maybe you don't need as many data scientists or as many engineers to actually be successful in AI. And it's actually the opposite. Like, you should expect that you need to be investing in this to be successful in it, because this type of technology is complicated. There is now a very robust partner and vendor ecosystem, but this is some of the most sophisticated technology and modeling projects that many of our businesses and many of the businesses in the world are undertaking. And I think it's important that you have that expectation going into it, because AI is not a panacea. AI is built on the data foundation of an organization. It's built on a lot of your existing tech architecture. And if you expect that's going to solve a lot of maybe your past tech sins, you're really setting yourself up for an opportunity to be really disappointed. But we think about it's critical to have critical business orientation, critical to have an established and a quantitative target around it. It's critical to set up the resourcing plan, a budget, and expectation for what it's going to be. And it's critical to think of this as not the panacea for how you've thought about your strategy around this, but it's going to ultimately build on top of the investments that hopefully you've been making over the last decade.
Yeah, Oliver, do you agree with that? AI is not a silver bullet. Like, what other, sort of things should firms be thinking about when getting this stood up?
Look, I wholeheartedly agree with Matt that there are, as I see it, three common pitfalls that I commonly see when I'm working with private capital firms, especially when they're starting work with AI. And frankly, all of them are avoidable. So the first is, to Matt's point, the firm has no clear objective, right? It sounds obvious, but it's the most common issue. A lot of firms start with the tech, they buy a tool or explore a model without actually anchoring it to a business need. And I hear firms say things like, we've licensed this Gen AI platform, but we're not sure what to do with it. And frankly, that's the wrong way around. Initial experimentation and building a business case as part of a pilot is really good. But I think full procurement needs to be tied to a clear use case. So be it, automating a bottleneck or augmenting a team or shortening a cycle. The second pitfall is, and I think, Matt alluded to the second part of this, it's a combination of overestimating what off-the-shelf AI can actually do, and then underestimating the messiness of firm data, right? So, for example, a mid-market PE firm came to us after they unsuccessfully trialed a diligence tool, and in a clean demo, it looked great. But when they actually ran real PDFs through it, so there were bad formatting, footnotes, the usual mess, it all fell apart, and it missed carve-outs and currency formatting and flagged standard clauses as red flags. And it ended up being the case that analysts spent longer checking the output of that than they would have spent doing it the old-fashioned way. And that really wasn't just a tooling failure; it was a planning failure, and it was never going to work with unstructured data. And then the third point I'd make, and it's a final one, is I think treating AI implementation as just another IT project when it's really a change program. And this is building on the point Matt said about kind of investing in personnel. AI adoption isn't just an IT project, right? It needs cross-functional ownership. So you need buy-in from deal teams, legal, compliance, ops. And if they're not involved from day one, you can end up in what I see as kind of permanent pilot mode, or else, nobody uses the tool. And to get around that, you just need early alignment. So you get the right people around the right table at the start and talk through risks and co-design your rollout. And that's actually when you see adoption stick.
I'm going to zoom out a little bit and just kind of offer heuristics that we spend a lot of time with our management teams on, because I think AI is often a catch-all. And I think it actually has very distinct sets of business owners that own different use cases And it's important to triage in the different ways I think that it can impact the business. So the three ways that we think about is one is really how can we reinvent and how can we build product that our customers love. This is most relevant for software businesses. I think it's increasingly relevant for services businesses. And it's bringing magic to the customer, and it's bringing functionality and new types of use cases for how they interact with your product. That can be, again, how we think about, Oliver's reference, search several times in Perplexity. Like, that is a different experience that is novel and a really rich customer experience that was previously not possible before the advent, before these large language models. That's really bucket one, and I think that is principally owned by your product officer, often rolls into a CPO and a CEO. The second and distinct bucket is really more of a functional orientation. Is as you look at your business processes, how can your functional leaders really leverage the types of tools? Again, think about Ontra, really your legal and compliance profession, and that as you work across an organization and the vertices across a business of how can my marketing function leverage this? How can my legal compliance? How can HR? There are discrete tools that are increasingly robust that are driving real ROI. And that is something that really management teams need to own, but ultimately push down to the functional leaders for how they adopt them in business. Right. And the third axis is really more at the board level, and the executive team are really thinking about how an industry is going to evolve. And I think that is really kind of putting your more prescient, far thinking hat on of, with the advent of these two buckets, how are the first two buckets, how is my industry going to evolve, and how should I be both offensive and defensive to react to that? Which is really more of a strategic bucket, and critically important that the chair of a board owns it, the CEO owns it. But I think AI conversations often try to include all three of those. And when you become too expansive, some of the messaging gets lost because it requires different owners, different KPIs, and 1, 2, and 3 are equally critical for management teams to be owning. And they need to be really thoughtful and pragmatic in how they think about their strategy across the three vectors. So I thought that was just important to zoom out because without that kind of going an assumption, it's easy to get overwhelmed and not have or try to approach a singular strategy to AI when it really needs to encompass kind of, I think, each of those three pillars.
So I'm curious, when you're thinking about AI and automation in particular, can you share some examples of how you've been able to leverage those tools just to help you be more efficient, address some of those bottlenecks that if you're trying to do that work manually would have been more difficult? What did that look like and what was the impact? You want to start, Dave?
Sure. Yeah. So I, similar to what I said earlier, I'm a late adapter of technology for sure. So kind of my first foray into seeing AI was implementing Ontra and the AI that is inherent in the platform. And as we think about, I think it's a constant focus for us in terms of how do we leverage it and how do we leverage it the right way. And you'll probably hear me reference figuring out the right way to use it and using it and ensuring that it's being used appropriately throughout the team. You'll probably hear me reference that a lot, but I think that that's very important in our quest to get more efficient. So there's no question that the use of AI and is making things more efficient, particularly with the lean teams, as you alluded to. And so the challenge for me is really how do I find the right tools and how do I ensure that those tools are being implemented the right way and in a compliant manner. And I think that's going to be an evolution, right? This is all pretty brand new. And so I think we got to kind of figure out where it goes. And so I've taken a lot of time, read a lot of things, taken a lot of conversations with compliance advisors and peers to understand kind of where it goes and how to do it the right way for now. But it's definitely, as we've kind of nosed into it a little bit, it's definitely gotten provided a lot of efficiencies for us. And one of those tools is obviously the Ontra platform.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I'm curious because we've talked about sort of, I think, two flavors of work. There's obviously the ongoing sort of cadence of, regulatory and compliance work that you need to do, and then there are these sort of one-off type of fire drills. You can apply this technology to solve both of those problems. I'm curious, from your perspective, do you think about those two things differently? Are you seeing a lot of value in sort of the, AI categorization of your obligations, for example, and sort of the managing of that cadence? And or do you sort of see it as, I don't know if you use our AI search functionality to, ask these kind of one-off questions and handle the fire drill aspect? How do you think about those two different, parts of the job?
Well, I can say I definitely use the AI search. I am also an AI skeptic. I am always very worried that I'm not going to get the correct information, that somehow I will, it will hallucinate. The AI search has been incredibly helpful in the platform, and it makes getting the information so much easier. And the best part is that it links to all of the underlying documents right there. So it makes verifying the information so much better. So if I have a question, just like how offsets are treated across our 10 funds, I don't have to pull up 10 LPAs to get the relevant documentation. I can just type in what are our requirements related to offsets, and it will pull the information up to me. I can type it in a normal language. I don't have to do a Boolean search. I have always struggled with that. I can just type it as I speak and get it all right there for me. And it makes it so that you can present the correct information to the stakeholders in as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that's terrific to hear. And Dave, I saw you nodding. Do you have some of the same use cases?
Yeah, definitely. I think I think for the kind of everyday task, that absolutely. And I think I'm not going to say we've mastered all of the everyday tasks with the help of AI, but I think now that we've got systems in place to help make those less burdensome time-wise, it allows for me to think through to the other point of your question on these ad hoc kind of one-off requests, like what other ways can I figure out how to get more efficient with regard to that? And a lot of cases it's referring back to what we already have in place, but I think as we think about where it goes into the future, that's one of the big questions, is how can I do that? And I think to Ed's point, the validation of the data is what keeps me skeptical. Although, so having the source data within Ontra is obviously very helpful. If everything could operate that way, it'd be incredible. But at least validating it and putting the processes in place, I think, should help with those kind of one-off requests that pop up seemingly all the time.
In a number of cases, we found in the funds context, there's really a role for outside counsel from the testing and the start of when we're piloting a tool. And the goal of having them involved in that pilot is to be able to just start talking early about the handoffs that will need to occur and ensure everyone is on the same page as to best practices for use of that tool. One of the examples that I'll utilize is our use of e-subscription materials. So that has been a long process at GA to ensure that not only are we covered purely from a contractual perspective and all documents are getting signed, but we're also ensuring that we have the right review teams that are able to effectively provide their stamp of approval as to the relevant portions of those agreements. And so what we found is our solution may vary from fund to fund, or our investment products to investment products, and flexibility is a key aspect of what we're looking for.
And then when you're setting out sort of responsibilities, Kendra, of like, let's say you're the ESEB doc example you were giving then, you're kicking off a new process and you're going through like who's going to be doing what in this sort of the new world. Who sort of runs that in your perspective? Is it from GA side? Is it the law firm that maybe the knowledge management team help document that, or is it something that you look to the vendor to help map out with you? Who sort of leads it? Or, and I'm sure it is a bit of everyone, but just in your experience.
Yeah, so at GA, we would take kind of the quarterback position with respect to management of the usage of the tools. But of course, that would be in dialogue with the service provider as to their capabilities, and also very much, working alongside our external counsel.
And Brendan, maybe especially with your role as a sort of head of AI solutions, I'm sure you're seeing a lot of this sort of best practices discussion. But what sort of role are you taking, and what role do you see your law firm taking when evaluating this and rolling it out?
I think the most important thing is before the IT team was separate from the lawyers, and design thinking might be somebody that you have as an expert in your firm. All that's coming together, so a client team is going to have somebody up front that might be an IT person and a design thinker to figure out, like to Kendra's point, what do we need here? Is PDF okay, or is this the type of matter, transaction, or thing we're working on that we actually need a better solution for it? So I think that, like I said, it's law firms becoming knowledge management firms, where you start to have to think of it as a team that represents the client, and then working with their team to make sure that you're going to get to a solution that makes sense for that particular transaction and product. And I think that's the big difference of where law firms are going. If they try to keep the IT team in the back room or design thinkers away from the table, we won't get a good solution. So it's a bigger group at the table, and you're going to see different types of billers from law firms, not just lawyers. I don't know if Kendra will agree with this, but I don't think she'd mind paying for an IT/consultant that's going to save her, thousands of dollars. That's not going to be a problem than having $1,000 or $2,000 an hour lawyer or pound lawyer at the table.
Yeah, we're fortunate to have some in-house expertise on that front, but agreed, an ounce of prevention being worth a pound of cure is certainly true in this case. You want to ensure that whatever you're investing in, right, it is an investment of time and internal resources, and all of that is something that you can keep and can grow with you as well. I think that is where, we also ask our outside counsel to be not just solving the immediate challenge, but ensuring that we're future proofing as well. What if we do something more complex? What if we add a Luxembourg sleeve to this product down the road? How does all of this work? Can the solution be flexible enough for us? And more importantly than I think, what is the right product, I think, is what is the right partnership. Because these products should grow, they should evolve, they should be adding new features. We should all be growing and evolving in our knowledge. And, on the topic of AI specifically, prompt creation is something that, was not on my radar 4 years ago. And when I joined GA, and now it is something that is becoming increasingly important to deliver the results that we need from an AI solution. So, great thoughts, Brendan.
The question is really, if you're thinking about the tripartite between vendor, client, law firm, what would be the advice, tip, or even asking for help you could say to first the vendor, and then second to your counterpart at either the law firm or GC, when you're looking at AI? Like, what would you ask for, or what would you give them a hot tip? What's your sort of key takeaway to those other parties? And happy for maybe Kendra to kick us off.
Yes, 1 second.
In which case, I'll tag in Jeremy.
Yeah, I love being second choice. Perfect. No, I think look, it's a very broad question, but I think, again, it feels like, to repeat something I think we've all said enough times now, but a collaborative diligence process. Work together to identify the specific problems or workflows that we're trying to solve for or provide for. Work within the tripartite to diligence that, to figure out exactly who needs to cover what and why, and ultimately have the client solution and the client satisfaction, as it was, as the end result. And I think that there's all sorts in between. And, Brendan and Kendra should lay lots of detail on this, but, certain examples of that are ongoing reviews of the technology. How do updates get implemented? What is the ongoing training profile? Because it's not just Brendan at his firm, onboarding this solution for a particular client and working with it. There is going to be lots of different people who will actually be interacting with it in a slightly different way. So how adaptable is that tech platform to allow for a variety of workflows, to Kendra's point earlier, over multiple funds or multiple deals? Again, I'll hand over because there's lots and lots of detail here, but that would be the headline myself.
The vendors that we've had the best experience with and who we've ultimately ended up engaging have shown us both where they are and also what their growth trajectory is. And I think that's incredibly important, because we don't want to do a one-off 1-year partnership. We want you to be with us ideally for many, many years. And so understanding that you're working with a team that is not going to be content with just the status quo, but is going to continually be evolving and adding new features is incredibly important. And then I think the flip side of that is also, we've met with a lot of vendors who have, demoed for us their proposed solutions. And sometimes what is promised, when we actually start to kick those tires, we find the product just isn't really ready to deliver. And so that becomes, I think, a point where we say, come back to us once you more fully developed this, but right now this isn't actually going to meet our needs. And so I think humility in that process to know as a vendor, what do you have, what are you offering, and not oversell that, because that just leads to challenges down the road. On the law firm side, I would echo all the what Jeremy just said, and I think the goal is that we're inspired by our outside counsel colleagues. Bring us solutions, point out when something is a manual process, and say, and we're starting to do this in this way, and this is how we can incorporate AI into that in a way that we've seen working for other clients and we think could work really well for you. So I think we're very partnership is part of our DNA at GA, on the investing side with entrepreneurs, on the capital solutions side, partnering with our investors, and is very much part of our legal department process as well. So continued partnership on all fronts.
Okay. Brendan, do you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, I'll be quick on that. I think the first thing, obviously, know the setting up front, which is start with the vendor and say, vendor, what are your typical questions you've been asked? Here's our checklist. Get us up to speed. So you kind of work with them to get all the typical questions you need answered up front. You then make sure you can go to the client, and it might happen with you together initially, but you go to the client and say, here's what we're seeing, here's our checklist, here's how the vendor's addressing this. Do you have any concerns? And how do you want this to work? And so at the beginning, that's the setting. But what I really liked about what Jeremy said, something about it's ongoing, it's a dynamic relationship, because there are going to be bugs in these products, or there are going to be new potential solutions, which is the really good thing, is that, that paralegal comes, why does it do this? What if we could have this information presented this way? Those types of things, and making sure that ongoing relationship with the vendor to kind of communicate on, we'll call it fixes, on updates, on new versions, or even completely new products, that makes a really healthy relationship across the board. And it's over communicating is the key to that part of it, and making sure the right people on your team are getting the information.